Hey everyone, it's Tracy Martirana here from Holistic Wellness with Tracy. A few days ago, I made some hummus and I still have quite a bit left. So today I decided to cook eggplant steaks, I would say sort of Mediterranean eggplant steaks, using the hummus and a few other ingredients that I had in the fridge. And I thought that instead of doing my typical cooking video today, I would actually just sort of invite you along with me. So I'm going to do minimal editing to this video and just allow you to be here with me. So ahead of time, I say, excuse me for any weird camera movements as I try to make sure that you can see what I'm doing, but I just thought this would be a fun thing to do. So let's get cooking. This is my plan. I have an eggplant. I'm going to slice that up into steaks. I'm going to grill it, and then I'm going to add some of my leftover hummus, red peppers, roasted red peppers. I have some olives, and I have a bunch of this baby spinach that I'm going to wilt down. I have some feta cheese, and then I'll probably serve it with the quinoa, maybe slice up some olives and parsley to go in the quinoa, and call that dinner. So I have a few of my tools out already. I have my sheet pan. I have my saucepan that I'm going to cook the quinoa in, the grill pan for the eggplant, and a saute pan that I'm just going to use to sort of wilt down the spinach. Okay, so I moved some things around in the kitchen, so hopefully you can see a little bit better. Right now you can only see the cutting board and not my stove, because unfortunately I am 6 feet tall, which makes it very difficult to set up a camera in my kitchen so that you can see my face and what I'm doing. So we might have to move around a little bit, but I think it'll be okay. I'm going to start with my eggplant and get that ready to grill. So you can't see it, I'm sure. I'm not going to move the camera just to start the stove, but I am just turning on my grill pan so that it can heat up while I work on prepping the eggplant. So like I said, I'm cutting this into steaks. So I'm just going to cut off the stem and the bottom. I'm going to give it a light peel. So I just got this really cool, nice metal peeler because the one I had previously worked all right for a while, and then I would find when I would try to peel stuff like a butternut squash, something that really had some resistance to it, it wouldn't work well at all, and like the little metal thing would actually pop off. So I invested in this and I love it. So I'm going to link that in the video descriptions just in case you are interested. So I'm just going to give this a quick peel. Look at that. See how great that is? It's like the miracle peeler. So I'm not going to take all of the peel off, but the bulk of it so that it's easy. Sometimes that can just be a little tough once you grill it to bite through that. And then I sort of cut off a little bit of like the bulbous ends or the bulbous sides so that I can cut it into steaks. So I'm going to cut this into 4 pieces. So once right down the middle and then each side in half. It doesn't have to be perfect. Well, see, that really wasn't perfect. It'll still taste good no matter what. So I have these 4 steaks. I'm just going to sprinkle them with a little bit of salt. Both sides. And let that sit for a minute while I prepare some oil that I'm going to baste this with before I put it on the grill. So I just have a little bowl. I'm going to put in here a clove of garlic. So I'm just going to mince this up. Right into the bowl. And then I'm going to add just a little oil. Zhuzh it around a little bit. I have in here, I have a little brush, so I just mush that around, letting the garlic flavor the oil. And then what I'll end up doing is brushing the eggplant right as I put it onto the grill. Maybe add just a little more. Let's see, my grill pan is feeling warm. So I'm going to want to grill this in a second, but the other thing I should probably do is get my quinoa in. So I'm going to serve this with a side of quinoa. So I have my saucepan. I'm just going to put a cup of quinoa and 2 cups of water on the stove. Let that begin to simmer. We eat a lot of quinoa, so I end up buying these big bags of it at Costco. So my cup of quinoa. 2 cups of water. And I'll just stir this around a little bit and get it on the stove. If you've never cooked with quinoa, I highly recommend it. It is a very nice alternative to rice. It's a whole grain. It's higher in protein. And it has a little bit more texture, a little bit more chewiness, which I enjoy. Not everybody does, though. So since I've salted this, I'm just going to wipe it off a little bit. You really don't have to do this. When you salt it, a little bit of moisture comes out, and it just sort of makes the texture a little bit better. Some people say it gets rid of a little bit of bitterness. I never really find it bitter to begin with. So I'm just going to take one of my eggplant steaks and brush it with this oil and place it on the grill, oil side down. And then I'll do another until I got all 4 of these on the grill. Now the grill, you're going to bake this anyway, so the grilling is really, for one, just to maybe get a little bit of a sear on it and just to start the baking or the cooking process so it doesn't have to bake for very long. And this little guy is a little funky because my cutting was a little crooked. And then I'm going to take this oil and I'm just going to put some oil on the other side of the eggplant. In a moment, I will move the camera so you can see what I'm doing, or what I've done, I should say. All right, so we're just going to let that cook up a little bit. This away, clean up my mess. All right, so I moved the camera so you can get a little bit of a better angle to see what I've done here. So I have the eggplant on the grill pan. I have my quinoa in a saucepan over here. And next, I'm just going to saute up my spinach a little bit. So let's get a fire on there, get this warmed up a little bit. I'm just going to put in a little oil. Kind of not measure, I just drizzle. And we wait. I have probably, I don't know, 2 handfuls of spinach here. This is just left over from some spinach I used the other night while I was cooking. You'll find that this, while it looks like a decent amount of spinach now, once it sautés, will be a very tiny amount of spinach. But we're just adding a little layer of spinach to each steak, so it doesn't need to be a lot. Well, this pan is still warming up. I'm just going to check on my eggplant. Again, see, we're just trying to get some sear marks, just to get it started cooking. Doesn't take long. And that's one thing I love about this meal. It actually comes together pretty quick. It's a great way to use up some leftovers. It's a great way to use eggplant. It's a great way to make a vegetarian meal that even carnivores will eat. That nice bitey, chewy texture of the eggplant, and the fact that you can call it a steak will convince a lot of your meat eaters that this is an exceptional meal. All right, so this is definitely warm. I'm going to, actually, you know what? I have this garlic left over from my oil. I'm going to just put this right in here and let it flavor up my spinach with a little bit of this garlic. Why let it go to waste? And then add my spinach. Just saute this a little bit. Again, we're just trying to wilt it really. Get a little bit of the water out of it before we pile it onto our eggplant. I can see it shrinking before my eyes. And I'm just going to turn it off and I'll let that residual heat continue to cook it down. Oops. Let's take a look at the eggplants. Just giving my quinoa a little stir to make sure it's not sticking as it begins to simmer. And once it gets up to like a nice simmer temperature, almost to a boil, we'll kick the heat back down a little bit just to let it simmer for a few minutes. I'm turning the heat off my grill pan and I'm going to transfer these steaks to a baking sheet. I like to line my baking sheet with either aluminum foil or parchment paper just to make cleanup a little bit easier, but not necessary. I'm just going to set these on here. Sorry, just spin that around, trying to get them situated the best. There they are. So I have them sitting here, and then we're just going to start putting layers of yumminess on there. How's that? All right. Throwing stuff around. So what I typically do is I layer this. I put the hummus on first, and then I'll put a little bit of the spinach, a little bit of the roasted red pepper, a little bit of the olives on top of that, and a little sprinkle of feta cheese. You could really do it in whatever order you want. I like to put the hummus on first and the greens and the reds on later because it just looks so pretty to see the spinach and the roasted red pepper on top, but whatever works best for you. The hummus, again, this is just plain hummus that I had made the other day. I will link that video in the description below as well. I made it just plain. If you made hummus or you have hummus that you purchased that is flavored, that would work really well. I can't think of any flavor of hummus that you would typically buy or make that wouldn't taste good in this dish. So this is just plain lemon. If you added some lemon to it, it'd be great. Garlic, delicious. Again, I don't think you could go wrong. Use whatever you have and whatever you like. So I'm just going to use a butter knife to smear some on. When it comes to the exact amounts, it doesn't really matter. You just want a decent coating. If you have lots of hummus, feel free to put it on really thick. If you only have a little bit, go a little thinner. But the hummus adds a nice protein layer. So this dish ends up being a very well-rounded dish. You have all the veggies you have the eggplant and the spinach and the roasted red peppers. You have the protein in the hummus and also in the quinoa, which is very high in protein. It's also a whole grain. You even have a little bit of dairy from your feta cheese. Now, if you wanted to make this vegan, you would simply omit the cheese. There is nothing else in here that is an animal product. I'm trying to think, everything, it's also gluten-free. There's nothing in here with gluten. So this would be a nice meal to serve if you have people, either your family or friends, that have some dietary restrictions. Just by leaving out the feta, you have dairy-free, animal-free, gluten-free, meat-free, and yet it's delicious. All right. So you can see we got the layer of hummus on here. Before I get going too far, I am going to stir my quinoa. You can see it's just starting to boil over. Perfect timing. So I'll give it another little stir. Turn the temperature down so it's just simmering away in there. And I'll come back to this. So we have our hummus on. Now I'm going to add the spinach. So I really just go by how much spinach I have, determines how much spinach goes on each one. So you can see that, this cooked down to be very little spinach. But that's what I had, so that's what I chose to use. So you don't need a lot, just a little bit, kind of spread it out, try to spread the leaves out so it covers most of the eggplant. Oops. Now I'm throwing spinach, that's not good. Can't let any go to waste since I have so little bit. The quinoa is still trying to boil over on me. All right. So that's looking beautiful. You can see it from there. I'll give you a better look in a minute. Now, when it comes to roasted red peppers, I often have roasted red peppers and actually Kalamata olives in my refrigerator because we make several dishes that use them. Right now, I just have this jarred version that we bought in the grocery store. Sometimes I'm lucky enough to have homemade when my husband makes them out on the grill, just chars them out on the grill and then peels off the char and the skin and then chops them all up and puts them in like a garlicky olive oil. It's delicious. Actually does taste a little bit better than these jarred ones, but use what you got. So these ones are also nice because they're already like cut into strips. Sometimes when I buy them, they're whole peppers and I just have to pull them out and cut them up. Even this kind of big strips, I want them smaller so they're not hard to cut while you're eating. But they're nice because they cut easy, so I can just cut them right with a fork as I'm doing this without having to get a knife. Oh, a few more. Hopefully you can see okay. And again, if you really love roasted red peppers, add a ton. If you don't, add just a few. So here you can see how it's building up. So we have the hummus and the spinach and the peppers. And now I'm just going to add some Kalamata olives, because Kalamata olives just give such a nice salty zip, as does the feta actually. So you don't want to go nutso with them. These are already halved, also very convenient. I typically just buy whatever I get. So sometimes I have whole olives that I have to cut in half. Sometimes I'm lucky enough to find a jar of, or someone's actually done that work for me. So that looks nice. Ooh. Oh, big mess right on tape. It was recorded. All right, and then I just have already crumbled feta. I will just sort of crumble it a little bit more, taking some of the bigger pieces and just sort of setting it on here. Some of the big pieces can be crumbled into little pieces. I sort of do this piece by piece just so I don't end up with feta all over my pan. I hate wasting it, and it'll at least be easy to clean up because of the parchment paper, but it still will likely burn while it's cooking. More of my mess. Gonna do one more stir. My quinoa, make sure that's not boiling over again. It's steaming away, getting nice and soft. One thing I didn't do was start my oven, so I'm just gonna pop that to about 350, give or take. So you get a nice view of how these look right now. So, sorry, sunshine in my eyes. They look beautiful, and they are now ready to go in the oven. So I'm just going to wait for my oven to preheat a little bit, and then I will pop these in while my quinoa finishes. And when it comes out, dinner will be ready. So while the oven was preheating, I just did a quick little cleanup of the kitchen. So now the oven is ready, so I'm going to stick the eggplant in there, and then it looks like the quinoa is also done, so I am going to put that into a bowl and add a little seasoning to that. So join me. So eggplant going into the oven. Probably only going to need about 10 minutes. I will set a timer. And then my quinoa, you can see, is all nice and soft. So I'm just going to put this into a glass bowl. Makes it a little easier for me to stir in my flavors, and I can cover it up and leave it sit until the eggplant is ready. Nice and fluffy. Yum. Now, to flavor this, I'm going to add a few of the Kalamata olives. Just a few, because I don't want to overpower it with saltiness. Put a handful. I'll go just a few more. I'm going to dice it down because I also don't want big, giant chunks. I want just a few little bites here and there. That looks good, don't you think? So I'll put that in my quinoa. And then I love fresh parsley in just about anything. I just feel that, for one, it adds a little bit of fresh herbal goodness, but it also just that fresh flavor in anything that's already cooked. I don't know. It just elevates it to a whole new level, I think. And then we'll just stir that all in. You can add more or less. So if you really love olives, or maybe even if you have some green olives, just for something a little bit different, you could add in green olives. You could add in some roasted garlic. That would also be delicious in the quinoa. There we go. Looks pretty yummy. So I'm just going to set this aside while we wait for the eggplant to cook. It should be coming out of the oven in about 10 minutes, give or take, and so I will see you then. So the eggplant has been in for just over 10 minutes. I think it's probably done, so I'm going to pull it out. Oh yeah, I think that looks delicious. If you can see it, yummy, yummy, yummy. So let's fix up a plate. I'm going to grab a plate. We'll start out with this quinoa. Yum. Telling me that doesn't look delicious and like something even a carnivore would like to eat. So I encourage you, sorry, give this recipe a try. Switch it up however you want. If you want different toppings, you could even make maybe like a pizza version instead of Mediterranean. So give it a shot. Try maybe basil and tomato and mozzarella and do a caprese. Do pizza sauce and some other veggies. Call it pizza. Whatever sounds good to you. Give it a try, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for joining me. Again, my name is Tracy Martirana, and I use my knowledge of nutrition, Ayurveda, yoga, meditation, and herbs to bring you information and inspiration so you can live a healthy, happy, and balanced life. Please, if you haven't already, click the subscribe button, like my posts, share them, whatever you choose. Doing so helps YouTube know that people are interested in content like mine. Thanks. Have a great day.